Hey guys, welcome to Baking and Books. My name is Lexi and I'm an amateur baker who loves to read. So each week I post videos of myself attempting to bake something new while also talking about a book that I have recently read or just really love. I apologize for my absence last week. I was getting over a cold and I just did not have the energy to stand and bake and all of that stuff. So I just decided to take the week off for my own health, and I'm sure you guys understand that. Today we are going to be making a chocolate meringue cake, which sounds delicious, so I'm excited to get into that. And we're going to be talking about Ready Player One. Oh gosh, I forgot to look at the author. By Earnest Cline. Sorry, Ernest. I forgot. We're going to be talking about Ready Player One by Earnest Cline. This is a really good book. I was way more into it than I thought that I was going to be. There's also a movie based off of it, so you can always go and see that at later dates, or if you are just a movie person rather than a book person, that's fine. I won't fault you too much, and you can go and watch that. Although there are some pretty big differences, so my suggestion would be to read the book, but that's what we're going to talk about today. I have to make this cake from scratch instead of from a box, so that should be interesting. I've only done that a couple of times, and each time it's sort of hit or miss, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that I have to do is I guess I have to simmer water and then put some ingredients in, heat it up on the stove, and then I can pour it into a bowl and add other ingredients. It didn't say how much water, it just said simmering water, so I'm not really sure what that means. Although I think I might have just had an idea. Hold that thought. Okay, so I think what I should do is simmer the water, it doesn't matter how much, because then you put the bowl over top of the water and put the ingredients in, and it helps it like melt, I guess, makes it smooth, and then you can take the bowl off of the heat, let it cool, and start adding the other ingredients. So I think I just figured it out. So while my water is simmering, let's go ahead and cover a quick synopsis of the book. So Ready Player One takes us into a world where things are pretty bad. I mean, the whole world has pretty much gone to shit, and, global warming, it's for real, and it's coming. And the whole world has just basically lost it, except for like major cities are in pretty good spots, and of course rich people are in a pretty good spot, but the average everyday person is usually pretty poor, and their world is pretty dark and damp. But a while back, a guy named Holloway created the Oasis, which is basically a virtual reality world where you plug in, those virtual reality helmets, and there's like gloves that go with it. And you can create a whole new character that's completely anonymous, like your whole identity is anonymous, and you can work in the Oasis, you can go to school in the Oasis, you can pretty much do everything. Of course it started small, but now, you can do everything. So we're introduced to our main character, whose name is Wade, and he, of course, is pretty poor. His parents died a while back, so he lives with his aunt, who is not a nice person, and shares like a stacked trailer home with, multiple other families. And when I say stacked, I mean legitimately stacked. They live in the stacks, as they say. Like, think a trailer, right? And just stacking them one on top of each other, like 20 tall. So super safe, I'm sure. But he escapes every day in his own little private hideaway, and he gets into the Oasis, which is where he goes to school and hangs out with his friends. The problem is you still need money to hang out in other places of the Oasis, so he really can only go to school and explore the world that his school is on. But he considers himself to be a gunter, which is it's like an egg hunter. So when this guy Holloway that created the Oasis died, he left behind instructions to his fortune, which was basically that there were 3 keys which unlocked different levels, and the person who basically found all the keys and unlocked all the levels and got to the very end first would acquire his enormous fortune. So of course people put a lot of time and effort for like 4 or 5 years into finding these clues and these keys. Well, now things are starting to die out because nobody ever even found the first one. He left them with a riddle, which they were supposed to decipher, which led them to the first key, but nobody's yet figured it out. So the other problem is that they're basically like the bad guys are a separate corporation, and they're using all their funds and all of their time to basically, they call them the Sixers because they all just have number tags instead of name tags. and they all start with 6. And they just use these endless amounts of workers to hunt for these keys instead of doing it what Gunters consider to be the right way, by just, going out there and using logic and you as an individual person. But they as a company are doing it. And the problem is they're going to let capitalism take over if they win, and they're going to make the Oasis a monthly charge instead of its current thing where it's totally free to anybody. You'd have to pay to be in the Oasis, which of course the majority of the country and the majority of the world are extremely poor. So that takes away the happiness of so many people, not to mention the jobs and the hobbies. So it's a bad thing. So basically, Wade finds the first key, and it sort of leads him down this road of trying to win the fortune. And so after 5 years of nothing happening, he suddenly finds the key, and now it becomes a race to see who can get there first. So it's a huge comment on how we take care of our planet. It also has a lot of really cool technological little things in there, as well as a lot of 80s references. Holloway grew up in the 1980s, so he's a huge fan of everything that happened there. So of course there's a lot of references to that as well. Overall, it's a really fun book, and it was an enjoyable read. Something I would definitely recommend. Okay, I think my water is finally simmering, so excuse me while I go off camera, but I'm going to see if I can make this work. Okay, I'm supposed to put coffee in it. And I'm not really sure what kind, so I just have French vanilla. That might screw it up, but that's what I have. Okay, I'm not really sure that this worked correctly. It said to mix it all together until chocolate was smooth, but the chocolate did not appear to be getting any smoother. The ingredients are all together, so I'm hoping maybe that's the goal. I don't know. I'm gonna let it cool, I guess, and see what happens. I don't know. It was a weird thing to do. I feel like just use box chocolate. I'm sort of feeling like I should just grab, this recipe is trying to do the most, but whatever. Okay, so that's basically the end of the synopsis. So if you have not read this book and you don't want anything spoiled for you, go ahead and skip forward until it says no more spoilers, and you can just see how everything turned out. But if you've already read this book or you really don't care about spoilers, then stay with me. I'm going to attempt to make sure that this cake goes well, and I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper into books. Honestly, the first thing that I noticed about this story was just how weird it would be to live in that kind of world, where, everything is virtual and, even, I guess a lot of you are probably like, how could you not imagine that after the year and a half we've just been through? And yeah, no, I get that. It's just that what I'm saying is that it's always virtual. It's not just because of a disease. It's always been that way for a really long time because the world is literally going to hell. And there's no way to fix it. I guess it's easier to imagine now than it would have been a year and a half ago. Yeah, now I can imagine it a little bit easier. But I guess I just mean that, there was a lot of things in our life that were virtual in the sense of, we did our meetings on Zoom, and the kids went to school online. But it's very different than putting on a headgear and some gloves every day and literally going into a whole new virtual world. Virtual reality is not how we got through this last year or so, and that's what their whole world is. Their whole world is an insane virtual reality. And, even the equipment that they dole out to people is school issued, so they don't even have to pay for it. It's just become so much a part of their lives that it's almost like they don't even notice anymore. People like Wade's character don't even really know the difference. He talks about how the older generations have a hard time with the Oasis and are less likely to spend time in it because they came from a world before the Oasis. But kids like Wade were pretty much born into it because it's been around for so long. And that's their whole life. That's all they know. I also think that whether it's intended or not, I do think it's a comment on the way that we treat our world and the way that we like take care of each other and don't take care of each other around the world, because you know, he makes several mentions to the fact that the world is this way because we didn't help each other and we didn't try to save the planet. So, you know, that's obviously not the whole theme of the book, but I do think it is a comment on our world and that we need to be working on treating our planet better, which we do need to be working on that. So it's not really that much of a surprise, but, you know, if that's a comment that makes you roll your eyes, you're not doing enough to save the planet. And all you have to do is little stuff. It's not that hard. But I am not here to talk to you about your terrible life habits, so I digress. There were a couple of moments that I honestly felt like there was too much information. Like there was just too much detail. And I hesitate to say that because I think detail is important. And I think that oftentimes when authors or stories lack detail, they miss, like, really... I just think a lot of times when authors lack detail, or like when storytellers lack detail, there's a lot missing from their stories. So, you know, I don't want to say, oh, it had too much detail, but at the same time, there were moments where I didn't really feel the need for everything they talked about. Like, especially when he was going over, I think, Holloway's life story, it was just, there was a part of it that I was like, okay, this is interesting, it moves the story forward, and then there's parts of it where it's not really that interesting, and it doesn't really move the story forward, and I was just kind of like, okay, let's move on a little bit. Like, I don't know that I necessarily needed every single detail about Holloway's life. I mean, like, I understand that his life is what, you know, the search for the eggs and the keys are for, but I also think that it's just, there are times when it's like, okay, how about you give me this information as we go? Like, do we really need a whole chapter on Holloway's life? Like, couldn't we maybe pick this up at a later date? That's just my opinion. Like I said, I love details, they're great, but I do think sometimes details can be too much. Perfect example, if you've ever read Gone with the Wind. I haven't, but I've tried, and whew, it's too much. I am telling you right now, don't do it unless you love details. And I don't mean, oh, I like to have all the details I can possibly get. No, no, no. You need to love details. It's just one of those where details make the story and they need to be in there in order for things to work out well. But I also think that it's easy to get lost in the details instead of, like, actually just telling the story that you are meant to be telling. I would say that, and that's the one flaw for me in this book, is just that, like, the storytelling is mostly great, but I do think that there's a little bit too much detail in certain areas that could have been done in a different way. Like, we still could have gotten all of that information if it had been done in a certain way. There's definitely some major differences. Like, if you haven't read the book and you've only seen the movie, or if you've read the book and you're thinking about seeing the movie, you definitely need to know that there's going to be some major differences. Like, the first contest in the movie, I think, ended up being that they had to, like, do that race they were doing every day anyway, or every week or whatever, him and H. But, like, then you had to go backwards or something like that. Which is nothing at all like the first test in the actual book. Like, they had to go through and find that cave and defeat the Skeleton King or whatever by playing that old video game. I'm not going to remember the names of a bunch of these 80s things as well as a bunch of these games, because I'm sure some of them are fake to begin with, but also, even if they're not, I am not a gamer. So somebody who is a gamer is definitely going to appreciate this story way more than me. A quick update. I personally feel as though this is not going well. I just feel like, I don't know. I don't think that everything is going together like it should be, but I mean, at this point, we're just going to have to try to make it work, so it is what it is. Side note, my fiance hates when I say that, but it is in fact what it is, so sometimes you just gotta live with it that way. Sorry, babe. So there was the first challenge was different, and then I think even the second challenge was different. I'm trying to honestly even think what it was. I'm at the point now where like when I record these videos, I record them either like Saturdays or Sundays, and then I upload them for you guys on Wednesdays. But oftentimes, like I read this book probably close to a month ago at this point. So that's why sometimes I kind of have to be like, oh crap, what even happened? Which of course is why I started taking notes, but even still, sometimes I am not perfect. In fact, sometimes I am far from perfect. But anyway, I think the second challenge was different too. I think the third challenge was pretty much the same. It's also been like 6 months since I saw the movie, so I'm trying to remember the differences, but there definitely were some major differences. The movie ended up being a lot more, I think, ensemble-based instead of just focused on Wade's story, which is understandable. I mean, that's, you know, I don't think that's the end of the world. Like, as an actor, I'm all for, you know, making sure that everybody gets a little bit of spotlight, but it does change. Like, the book is mostly all about Wade, so it does change things quite a bit. Alright, well, supposedly this batter's ready to go, so I'm going to pop it in this pan and pop the pan in the oven, then I gotta make the meringue. I think the cake looks weird to me because of the coffee. Like, because the coffee is in it, it looks like it's not mixed up all the way, but I think it is. I think it's just that the coffee makes it look weird. Okay, yet again, I do not have something that looks like this that goes into this. So, I'm going to start by mixing my egg whites with these, and try to at least get them started on their way to being smooth peaks, and then I will switch to just like hand whisking for the rest of the time. This is only my second time doing egg whites this way, so let's just see how it goes here. I will say about the story though, sorry, I got a little bit of yolk in there. Hopefully it's okay. I will say about the story, though, that the technology is really cool. Like, just the things that you can do and buy. No! Dang it. I am so bad at this. Okay, I can do this. Anyway, the things that you can, like, do and buy is just, like, insane. Like, how when Wade gets to living on his own, and you know, like, because he was obviously like the first gunter to reach the scoreboard, so he starts making actual money and being able to like work and stuff, and he has like that really isolated apartment or whatever. I just think it's so cool how he has like his shower, and it like preps it, like he has his own little butler basically, and the shower like preps everything for him exactly how he likes it and all of that. Like, that's really cool to me. And then also the workout system. Like, can we just all take a minute? If you've read the book, you've got to take a minute to appreciate the workout system and how it, like, that's how he runs his computer. So if he doesn't work out, then his computer won't do anything for him. And then also, too, like, it keeps track of all of his calories and stuff for him so that he can kind of just eat healthy, but also, like, if he decides he wants pizza or whatever, like, it just makes him work out a little bit more or whatever. Honestly, like, don't get me wrong, I honestly think a lot of dieting is actually really terrible for you, and I think you need to be really careful about that. But I know a lot of us, myself included, that could definitely use that kind of workout system. Alright, I think this has come as far as it's going to without me just mixing it by hand. Oftentimes, Wade will talk about how he has to like play through a certain number of levels or play through an entire game or whatever. Like, I think there was one, it's when he got the extra life token. I can't remember what he was playing, but it's when he got the extra life token that came in handy later on, that he says it took him like 6 hours to get through that. And I just can't imagine that. I mean, I've already said that I'm not a game player, so I guess having said that, maybe it's really not that surprising that I would think that that's too much. But for me, it's like, I don't know, I've probably played a game I guess it depends on the game. I mean, there were times when I could play with friends and probably spend quite a bit of time on something. But if I'm playing by myself, most likely I'm not going to spend more than an hour or so playing something. And even like, I'm a huge fan of the Lego games. I like that you can just like hit stuff and get money, and, like break it open. Love that. So, I mean, I love those games. And my fiance and I have played through both of the Harry Potter ones, and we started on the Hobbit ones. And I can probably play that for like an hour-ish, and then I'm ready to do something else. Like just sitting there and playing games forever. I mean, my fiance totally could have been a gunter because he can sit and play games all day long. I just can't. Like that is just not something that I'm good at. And it's just not something that interests me as much. Like, I think there are some really cool games, and there's a lot of times where I like the concept of a game, but I just can't bring myself to play it for that long. So I know that in this world, I would have never been a gunter. I honestly, right from the beginning of that contest, probably would have been like, that's cool for some people, not for me. I'm having a little bit of difficulty with this meringue. I switched to the one and only one of these that I have in hopes that maybe it would help it move along a little bit faster. It has definitely been more than 3 or 4 minutes, which is what the recipe says it should take to mix this up. Even with me doing it by hand, it has been longer than that. So I'm a little bit unsure of what's going on. I don't know if it's because there was a little bit of like the yolk in it, and so it's taking longer or what, but like it is not doing the whole soft peaks forming thing at all. And I definitely cannot afford to be wasting 6 more eggs to start over. So I am just going to have to try to make it work, but that's kind of the holdup over here. Okay, we might be close. I slowed down my whisking a little bit, and I think maybe that's helping. Just trying to keep it in like healthy moving circles, and I'm hoping that's maybe helping some. A cake will be out of the oven pretty soon, so I gotta get moving on this meringue here. I think the thing too about this book is that it ends exactly as you would want it to, or that you would hope it would. At least for me. Like, you know, Wade took a huge risk for the team because he just wanted anybody but the Sixers and the bad guys to win. And I think, you know, because that pays off and because they're able to like get together and go into this final battle to defeat the bad guys, like there's just something so good about that. Like there's just something so satisfying about all of the heroes being able to come together and finally defeat the bad guys, and that, you know, Wade finally gets the girl, and that they form this bond and relationship, and that they get to do good things for the world. So that's what I loved about the ending, was just that it felt really satisfying to me after the long way that we had come to get there. I just felt like it was exactly what we deserved. Okay, so my cake just came out of the oven, and I am a little concerned. I don't think it's baked all the way, which is sort of the point, because I think you're supposed to put this finished meringue on top of it and bake it for another 20 minutes. The problem is that you're also supposed to use a springform pan, and we don't have one. So I didn't, and my thought was, okay, well, I'll just pop it out of the pan and put it on like a cookie sheet, and then just bake it another 20 minutes. But the problem is, I don't think that's going to work because I don't think my cake is fully done yet. It doesn't look like it, but I'm going to check. Yeah, it's 100% not all the way done yet. So I think I'm going to deviate from the recipe a little bit. I think I'm going to put it back in the oven until it's fully baked, let it cool, and I mean, the only reason I could think of that you would put this in there is just so that you get like a baked meringue, but I mean, I'm not really sure that that's worth the whole mess that it's going to be to try to put the meringue on now and bake it and then get it out. Like, I honestly just don't know how I would get it out. Part of me wants to try just because that's the way that things are supposed to be done. But also, too, I don't know, this meringue is a little runny, so I'm a little bit worried about pouring it on there because it's definitely already leaking out of Well, it's not leaking out, but it's definitely already at the top of the pan that I have. So I feel like the last thing it needs is to, part of me wants to try, you know? Like, part of me wants to see, okay, maybe I can get it out, or maybe it just stays that way and I just cut it up inside the pan instead of taking it out and putting it on a plate. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so here's our cake so far. You can see it's kind of wiggly. Well, I don't know if you can see or not, but it is. And you can also see it's right at the edge. So I'm going to put as much meringue as I dare, but we'll see here. If you left because of spoilers, go ahead and come back and join us. Here's what's happening. Our meringue is having a little bit of a cranky day, and it doesn't really want to work with us. But it is supposed to go onto our chocolate cake and then go back into the oven for about 20 minutes. So I am going to try that. The problem is I don't have a spring form, so getting it back out may be an issue, but we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it. Alright, I'm just going to put a little bit of meringue at a time because I'm really concerned that it's going to just like spill over the edges while it's baking, honestly. Like, I feel like that's, you know, like you can already see it's kind of going towards the edge. I worry about that a little bit. I don't want it to fall off the edge in my oven, you know? I feel like that would not be the way you want to go. Okay, I don't trust putting any more, so that's what we're going to do right there. I don't really trust it, but it's going to go back in the oven now, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so, I don't know. I feel like this is going to be a terrible cake. I have a bad feeling about it, but it is very close to coming out of the oven, so this is the moment of truth. Okay, it looks like we fried an egg on top of it. Look at this. What's going on? Why is it like that? It's like the meringue, I don't know. Maybe it's because the meringue didn't set up properly. I guess I should check to see if the cake is even baked now. This could honestly be a fail. But we haven't had one in a while, so I guess that's a plus. Okay, as far as I can tell, the cake is actually, although, see, I started to say I think the cake is actually baked, but then I stuck this in really far on the side, and it did not come out clean. Okay, well that came out clean, so the meringue is definitely a hot mess though. If I had to guess, I would say that this looks this way because the meringue did not set up properly, which I can't figure out why. I mean, I did have a little bit of yolk in there, but it wasn't a ton. Maybe that threw the whole thing off, but like the meringue refused to set up properly. It did get thicker as I added in the sugar a little bit at a time and the cream of tartar, so maybe that saved it a little bit, but I don't really know. And then as it baked for an extra 20 minutes, I feel like, okay, so the little bit in the middle, I took it out after 10 minutes and added more that I had in the little container. That looks like it should. I feel like the outer edges is like the sketchy part, but I guess we'll see. I'm trying to be really patient because I want it to cool, but I also really want to cut it open and see what happened. I feel strongly that this is going to be a failure, so we're not going to wait. We're going to cut it open. Okay, I got to know. Oh no! Oh no! Oh my gosh, you guys, it did not get baked in the middle. Or I think it mostly got baked in the middle, but then the meringue coming in there and just like made it, oh my god, this is just honestly like a soup. I'm just gonna tear it apart because why not at this point. Let's just mash it all together. We're gonna make a new thing that looks like cake and semi smells like cake, but it's called trash. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's like the sides of it got baked just fine. Like the sides of it definitely look like a regular cake. I'm sure you can see this hot mess from over here. I'm having a great time. But the middle for sure didn't. And I feel like it definitely had to do with the meringue. I just feel like it would have been so much better. Well, it would have probably been better if my meringue had done what it was supposed to. But I feel like it just been so much better if you just bake the cake. Take the cake out, let it cool, then put the meringue on top and be done with it. Maybe put it in for like 5 minutes so that it kind of gets a nice color to it. But I feel like because the meringue, it wasn't even baked all the way. And then the meringue went on there, which was more liquid into liquid. I don't know. I don't really understand why they would do that. We're going to taste it. You know what it kind of looks like? It kind of looks when you go to like an Applebee's or a Chili's and you get those like molten lava cakes. That's what it kind of looks like. See, look, this looks like normal cake. But the rest of it does not. This is gross. And that was the baked part of the cake. That cake is gross. Like, this recipe is not being saved. And I don't even think it's because I didn't do it properly. I mean, we all know I didn't do some of this properly. But honestly, like, it looks like cake. It looks like when you put it in your mouth, it should taste good. It doesn't. It's extremely bitter. I don't know if the meringue is supposed to help with that. But, like, I don't even want to try another piece or another section to see if the meringue helped. I'm going to check my ingredients really quick because now I'm curious. I mean, I did everything right, aside from not using the spring pan. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it looks a disaster and it tastes a disaster. That cake is so gross. I can't imagine what it tastes like when it didn't get baked all the way. I'm sure the meringue is a hot mess. This is a major fail, and honestly, I'm not even upset about it because it was such a pain in the ass to put together. The moral of the story is, why are you trying so hard with cake? Just get a box cake, mix it together, and then work on your other ingredients. Like, this is too much. I had to put, like, chopped up chocolate and cocoa powder and coffee in there. And, well, why are you trying so hard? Just go buy a box cake. This is the moral of the story. This is ridiculous. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today. It was a failure. I would definitely not even attempt to make this recipe again because even though I know I probably messed up in certain areas where it came to the meringue, I don't think I've messed up with the cake itself, and the cake itself is really gross and really bitter. I suppose if maybe you would prefer that and you know how to make a really great meringue, go ahead and try it and let me know if you have better success than I do. I personally think it's really gross and I would not recommend it. However, I would recommend this book. I think this was a really fun book. It wasn't super difficult to read. It was definitely really interesting. There is a second one, so I'm going to try to get a hold of that eventually and do that one because I think it's like a follow-up story and I think it would be really cool to read. But let me know your guys' thoughts on this book, but I really liked it and I really would recommend it. If you have other recipes that you would like me to try, please send them my way. I'm up for almost anything right now. And honestly, I think I'm getting a little bit better, so hopefully that's a good sign that we can try some harder things. If you have other book recommendations, please let me know. I'm not going to lie to you, right now I have a really long to-read list because, well, I don't want to spoil it, but I just got a new set of books, and I'm kind of putting them in between reading and rereading a different series. So I have like a whole book plan for probably the next 6 months, honestly. But if you have other books that you want me to try, definitely throw them my way, and I promise I'll get to them as soon as I can. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. This turned out to be a hot mess, but hopefully you still had fun. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. I try to do this every week for you. Sometimes it's not great, but it's still usually pretty fun, even when the recipe sucks, or when I suck at doing the recipe. So I really appreciate it if you would hit like and subscribe. Thank you to those of you that watch every week. I promise that I see you, and I really, really appreciate you. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I will see you next time.